Welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, a podcast where we break down our stories and our trauma, understanding how they have impacted our career and our life. This is a place where we break free from shame, own our truth, and step into our power, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Kim, an adoptee, a former foster youth, hairstylist, salon owner, breast cancer, and complex trauma survivor. So join us, pull up a chair, in this no sugarcoating, no holding back, honest conversation about healing and success. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 8 of the Survivor's Chair podcast. I am your host, Kim Russell. If you don't know me, I am a hairstylist, salon owner, adoptee. I was in the foster care system for 4 years, and I am most recently a breast cancer survivor. So I thought today would be a great day to talk about boundaries. I am headed to the Pennsylvania Beauty Pros Expo on May 18th and 19th at Seven Springs Resort. And I am super excited to be doing 2 classes there. One on trauma and charging your worth, and the other one on trauma and why we say yes when we want to say no. They're both on the impact that trauma and our story can have on our thoughts about money, how we handle money, why it's hard for us to put boundaries in place, and why it's hard when we do enforce those boundaries. So I'm like, you know what? Let's go through my class a little bit on boundaries because I think that would be helpful. And if I'm going to see you in Pennsylvania, I'm very excited, and you'll have a little sneak peek into the class. The thing about boundaries is they can get kind of blurred, in work and in personal. And I have to say my boundaries were a little blurred, especially in my professional life and my personal life, based on my people pleasing, feeling like I had to be the end all do all for everybody. What I've come to learn is boundaries are not barriers. They're bridges to feel safety and connection, and they're essential to protect our emotional and our physical space and our values. Boundaries are not just about saying no. That's what we think, no, 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 no. They're not about that. It is hard to say no, which is a big part of being people pleasers, if you have those traits, which I still work on all the time. But our lack of boundaries or finding them hard to uphold is typical trauma response. It's a response to our story and our beliefs. Most of us were never taught to have boundaries. We didn't even know what the word meant. We think boundaries as like putting up a fence. We were taught when we were younger, go give creepy uncle or whoever it was a hug, and you didn't want to, and you were forced to. And that little kid inside of you was uncomfortable, and you could feel it in your body because you didn't want to. And even if you voiced it and you spoke up and said, no, I don't want to, and your parents or your caregivers were like, too bad, go do it anyways, that was a breach of your boundaries. And you were pretty much taught that your voice didn't matter. Your discomfort didn't matter. So you learned to suck it up because it was the right thing to do, right? I'm using air quotes, the right thing to do. Go give the creepy person a hug that you didn't want to do, which makes it really hard to trust your instincts, trust your gut, because you're basically told that your gut's wrong. So a little personal story growing up because of my trauma, I just didn't have a gauge for what was bad and what wasn't, because everything was so bad that I just didn't have a gauge for inappropriate behavior. My trauma had such a hold on me, and I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to not be liked. I didn't want to be discarded again. So I laughed a lot of unacceptable behaviors and inappropriate remarks off, like it was just a big joke, and they were from adults, adult men. And I was very uncomfortable, but I just, and walked away. I didn't have the voice to say, that's inappropriate. I didn't even know what inappropriate was because everything was so I don't know what's a word I can use, but just kind of fractured, you know? My sense was fractured from very early on, so I just didn't have that gauge, even though my insides were screaming, "Ugh, get away as far as you can. Just get away from them as far as you can. Say something. Tell them you're not comfortable. Tell them whatever." On that note, let's go through like a few different types of boundaries that, we could all probably work on a little bit better. That's like the physical boundaries, which is what I was just talking about, your personal space, not giving the creepy uncle a hug when you don't want to. And then there's emotional boundaries, like not taking on other people's drama or issues, or it's different than being there for a friend versus someone just always dumping on you all the time and making zero changes in their life. They're just using you as this dumping ground for their stuff. Or it's somebody you feel drained after being with them. And even when you're with them, they're saying things and your stomach's upset and all that, but we're going to get into that stuff afterwards. And then there's mental boundaries. We talked about that in the last podcast, like words matter, who you surround yourself matter, what you say matters, your thoughts matter. And then there's sexual boundaries. What's acceptable and respectful to you. It's a very personal choice and decision. There's a lot of women out there, maybe there's guys too, but I'll speak from a women's perspective. There's a lot of women out there that say yes when they really want to say no because they don't want their partner to get upset or leave them or whatever. So it's finding what works for you. That's very, like I said, very personal. There's financial boundaries, which is my other class on trauma and charging your worth and understand how your story plays a role in how you deal with money. It's how you handle money, like who you lend money to, why you lend money to them, saying no without feeling guilty, and protecting your own financial wellness. I was a complete overgiver forever. And it's only recently that I realized I was tying my giving to my worth. If I wasn't giving, then people weren't going to like me. Like that was part of who I was. So I have stopped giving. Now I give in a healthy way when I want to, how I want to, and how much I want to. And then there's time boundaries. This is when you overextend yourself. I was definitely guilty of saying yes to two people and then having to cancel one and feeling like a big jerk for canceling one, which left me feeling nothing but shame. Why couldn't I just say no? I was the queen of squeezing people in at work, and staying late, coming in early, coming on my day off. My time boundaries were just out of control. Some of the things you might be feeling when your boundaries are being tested or not quite right. If you feel like you're being taken advantage of a lot, odds are that's a boundary issue. You don't express your needs, you suppress your emotions, you come out in a passive aggressive way, sarcasm, or, you give somebody the silent treatment, you're not talking, or you even emotionally distance yourself from people. And, just for the record, I am guilty of all of those. So nobody is perfect. Maybe you feel like you have to answer texts in the morning, like early in the morning or late at night, or if somebody texts you, you got to get to them right away because if you don't, they're going to get angry with you, or you're outside your work hours, or you're enjoying some time alone. Imagine that you're enjoying some time alone or your family time and somebody texts you or whatever, you feel like you have to respond right away. Or there's always the people who over apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, especially when you're enforcing boundaries. Because when you enforce your boundaries, you get uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable because it's something you've never done before. And then you have to deal with the after emotions of, oh my gosh, they're going to be mad at me. They're not going to like me. They're not going to talk to me anymore. And that's not the case. If that is the case, then there's bigger issues in the relationship, right? And then we're going to talk about how your body reacts, because I am a huge believer in our body and that our body is always trying to tell us when something is off. Always, whether it's we're suppressing emotions or we're suppressing words that we want to say, our feelings. Things that might happen if you get stomach issues, at the same time, you didn't speak up during that fight with your partner. You feel nauseous. You hear a lot of people say, oh, I have nervous belly, nervous belly. And that is just emotions, feelings that you're not expressing as far as I'm concerned. That's my opinion and my experience. Maybe your body is so exhausted and you are exhausted because you're trying to balance all of the yeses when you should have said no. Like you're overscheduled, you're way too busy. Busy is a choice. I'm just going to lay that on the line. Busy is a choice. And sometimes we say we're too busy when all we're doing is filling in time because we don't want to feel what we need to feel, if that makes sense. Maybe you have anxiety, panic attacks. Maybe you're like trying to force yourself to stay calm, not show your feelings, not speaking up. I mean, it's all kind of the same thing. That's suppression of true emotions and feelings that need to come out. And like I always say, your body finds a way to get it out. However, it has to. It finds a way. I was in a lot of abusive relationships that were very hard to manage. And the last one being the most difficult because he was an alcoholic. And I knew that I had to suppress what I wanted to say, what I was feeling, because it would only upset him further. When you suppress those emotions, even though the situation I shouldn't even have been in, it took me years to get out of that. And I am going to do an entire podcast on that, abusive relationships. Not that I'm an expert on them, but I did have my fair share of them, that's for sure. So, maybe you're living in fear. Like that was definitely a level of fear that I was living in. And my fight or flight response was in full swing all the time. I mean, it was in full swing from the time I was abandoned in a car at 1 year old. But then it just keeps building, like the fear built over the years. And for most of us who have lived with some kind of trauma, we feel this fear and this danger at every corner. I've mentioned that in multiple podcasts now. And if you're not feeling safe or you get a racy heart, you're short of breath. Like breath is such a signal. And it was such a huge signal for me because I had never taken a deep breath. And it was such a big deal because I couldn't take a deep breath. It wasn't until I started doing breath work and really working on my breathing, which is still difficult, to take a really deep breath and hold it and exhale. It was really, really difficult. So if you find yourself, you're holding your breath or you're like, really short, shallow breaths, that's another signal that your body is just in this fight or flight mode. So when your boundaries are being challenged and you don't know they're being challenged because your body has been the way it's been forever and you blame your stomach issues on that's how your body is. And that's not the case. You're just not speaking up, not getting your emotions out. Your boundaries are being challenged all the time. So your body reacts. Like when you're around certain people or certain things or situations, do you feel yourself tense up? Are your shoulders up by your ears? Is your jaw so tight that you're getting treated for TMJ? But it's because you've got your jaw clenched at all times. It's definitely things to look at. So what can we do to start practicing boundaries? Because that's the only way they're going to get better if you just practice. And it's like anything else, a little bit at a time. And I talk about baby steps all the time. If you go in full on head first, it's going to be scary. It's going to be hard. And odds are that they won't be able to stick because it's just going to be so overwhelming. And if you've never done them before and your trauma behaviors are running the show, then it's going to be hard. I will say the best news about boundaries, like a lot of trauma behaviors, is that we can unlearn them. You can unlearn them. You know how we feel very strongly about the ability to reprogram our brain. And of course, I like to have everything backed by science, even though there's things that I believe that are out there that we'll never be able to understand or explain. But I do believe with practice and self-awareness and self-trust that we can change our behaviors and we really are rewiring the brain, known as neuroplasticity. I will talk about more of that soon. So what can we do? First, it's just paying attention to our body, paying attention to your gut. If something feels off, odds are it is off. We know, we just don't trust ourselves enough. We haven't been taught to know how to trust ourselves. So it's paying attention that if you feel that tension when you say yes or when you say no, it's if you're holding your breath or what can you do in moments like that? What can you say when, for example, when somebody says, oh, are you free Saturday night? And, this was always hard for me. Are you free Saturday night? And you are free Saturday night, but you don't want to do anything. And I always felt if I didn't have anything to do, then I should say yes, because my time and my relaxation wasn't a worthy enough reason to not give somebody else my time, if that makes sense. So what do you say in those moments to practice when somebody says, are you free Saturday night and you're free, but you really don't want to do anything? You say, you know what? Let me get back to you on that. And then sit on it. Sit and deal with the feelings that come up and deal with the body, and then get the courage to say, you know what, I'm just going to hang in on Saturday night. I need a little me time. You know what most people are going to say? My gosh, definitely. I love me time. Are there going to be those few that are going to challenge you because they're used to you giving up your time for them? Oh, come on. You're not doing anything anyways. You should get out of the house. It's not good to stay in. And then you're going to have to keep saying, you know what? Yeah, thank you. But I really just want to have some time to myself. That's when it gets really challenging, when you have those people that keep coming back because they're just not used to you having boundaries, and they'll get used to it. Or if they don't get used to it, then they'll bug somebody else to go out on a Saturday night. But that's when it's important to kind of reevaluate how you feel around certain people. Like if that person badgering you and then you finally gave in and you said yes, are you going to go out to dinner and be resentful? Maybe you'll have little outbursts, a little passive aggressive. That's when the sarcasm comes in, because you're keeping stuff in and it's building up. You didn't honor your boundaries, and you didn't honor yourself, and you gave up your time for this person, and now you go and you're resentful and you're angry, you're upset with yourself, you're upset with them for pushing you. It's gonna happen. I always say give yourself some grace, because boundaries are going to take time and they'll probably forever be hard. But paying attention to how you feel, say you do cave and you go, and when you come home, just evaluate, how did that make me feel? Do I want to do that again? How can I do things differently the next time? I thought that as far as boundaries go, I thought I was like the end all do all for everyone, right? Like, what would people do without me if I didn't consistently show up for everything that everybody needed or wanted? You know what happens? They figure it out and everybody's okay. And what I have to sit with is, when I don't be the everything for everybody, is, are they still going to like me? Are they still going to love me? Are they still going to want to spend time with me? That whole abandonment piece. And that's something that I sit with and I work through. I just don't know if it's ever going to leave. People talk about healing. I talk about healing, but I think healing is a kind of a strong word. I think that managing our body's reactions and our emotions and our feelings are probably a better word for me. Let me know how you feel about that. But I do believe that every baby step we take and every time we honor our bodies, our minds, and our personal limits, our boundaries, which, everybody is different, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. I feel like every time you do that, you're honoring your life and the life that you want to live, not the life that everybody else expects you to live, what you think society expects from you. It's really challenging to follow your own instincts. And again, that's why I say a lot about social media and comparison. And if you feel like you should be doing something and you really don't want to, and where you get FOMO, everybody's doing it, but you're not. Everybody's going, but you're not. I'm now at a place where I feel okay about not going, but that took me a long time. Even if I was exhausted, if everybody was going, I had to go because I didn't want to miss out. I didn't want anybody to talk about me not being there. Now I am very comfortable saying my time is my time. I really love my alone time. I love my downtime, and it's okay. It feels good. So I think I'll leave you with some kind of power statements of boundaries. That's things that you can say to yourself when you're in that moment of, what do I do? What do I say? And you don't have to say them out loud. You can just say them to yourself, or you can just write them down. I talk about journaling all the time, and you can just write them down. You can take these, you can make them yours, or you can think of your own, some that works specifically for you. An important one for me is saying no is not rejection. I'm not rejecting anybody. And when somebody says no to me, they're not rejecting me. Somebody who's felt rejected their whole life, that's a big one. Saying no is self-respect. It's like trusting myself to know what is right for me. Another statement is, I am not responsible for other people's feelings around my boundaries. Somebody gets upset with you because you put those boundaries in place. You are not responsible for their feelings. Nobody can make other people feel a certain way. if that makes sense. Let me try to clarify that a little bit. If they're disappointed that you're not going, you're not responsible for their disappointment. That's something that they have to dig in and learn why they feel so disappointed. If they're angry because you're not going, it's not your responsibility. It's something for them to figure out. Another message is, I am responsible for honoring my own truth. You are responsible for you. Again, nobody is going to make you feel a certain way. If you feel guilty for not going, you feel bad for not going, that's something that you have to dig in. They didn't make you feel bad. They didn't make you feel guilty. You have to dig in and figure out why you have these feelings and where they come from. That's the hardest part of all of this work and trauma work, is digging and getting to the root of where it all starts. Another one, I choose relationships that respect my limits. The more boundaries that you put in place, the more you start to understand yourself, the more you pay attention to your gut and your instincts, the more you're going to recognize the people that are always constantly pushing your limits. And you're probably going to find that you don't enjoy the time with them as much as you thought. Going back to the guilt here in this one, I release guilt and stand rooted in my worth. Like I said, your time, whether it's just free time, you are worth that free time. Just because you have free time doesn't mean it's for everybody else. Every time I listen to my body and speak my needs, I am building a life that feels safe, free, and mine. And I promise you, every time you listen to your body and honor your body, you will feel those things. You know, boundaries are a daily practice of self-trust. And every time you honor your limits, you're honoring your body and you're honoring your life. Period. So my friends, I would love to hear from you. I would love feedback. Reach out on any social media outlet, email. You can hop on my website. All of that is in the show notes. I put it in the show notes every time. And I'm actually going to put in, if anybody's interested in joining me at the Pennsylvania Beauty Pros Expo, I'm going to put the information in the show notes too. Again, that's May 18th and 19th. And what a phenomenal beauty show this is, because the education is like no other. And the array of education, I mean, just the fact that they are inviting workshops on trauma, just that alone is huge. You know, they're inviting all kinds of education, not just balayage and hair cutting. And there's a lot of unbelievable people there doing all of those things. But it's a great show. And you can get tickets at salontraining.com. And I'm gonna link all that stuff. And if you're a hairdresser listening, if you're not part of salontraining.com, it's a monthly membership. It's very low fee, and you get a monthly class. And all of that is in libraries and archived, and you can go back and watch them all. And there's amazing educators in there. It's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. So I'll link all that in the show notes. I will leave you today, my friends, on give yourself some grace, practice baby steps, practice those boundaries on people you love. And I guarantee, one little step at a time, you'll be surprised at how easy it gets once you keep doing it. But like I said, I'd love feedback. I'd love to hear from you. Anybody wants to be a guest? Haven't had a guest yet. I'm ready for a guest, I think. No, I am ready for a guest. See, words matter. Anybody wants to share their story? I would love to hear people's stories. I would love to hear whatever tools they've used to survive or change. I love it. All right, my friends, thank you for being here for episode 8 of the Survivor's Chair podcast, and I will see you next time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your support. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning into the Survivor's Chair podcast. You can head over to my website, www.kimrussellpro.com. That's KIMRUSSELLPRO.com. You can catch up on my blogs. Follow me on social, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or TikTok. All the links will be in the show notes, and I'll see you next time in the Survivor's Chair.